Good morning. Welcome to chapel this morning, this week. space that is set up a little bit differently than it has been at any other point in time this fall. Welcome to chapel with probably a direction at the door that you've never heard before. Welcome to chapel in which you were told where to sit. And if you notice, there was a line, therefore, that you couldn't cross in the middle. And as we were thinking about this chapel day this morning, and the phrase, "it's complicated," which Kent will introduce us to in just a moment, we decided that it was only fitting that we begin that right from the very moment that you come in, and that our gathering begin in that moment. And so we welcome the Concordia Orchestra and members who went on the international tour to the Holy Land this last May. I had the great privilege of going and being with them and playing with them and getting a chance to introduce them to people who I love very dearly, introducing two sets of people that I love very dearly to each other. And so it is a great pleasure to invite them and to have them and their reflections and some invitation into some moments today. If you are intrigued by this morning and want to learn more, I would invite you all to the Global Brown Bagger Lunch on Tuesday, October 28th. There's information in your program about that, and there will be a more extensive information about the tour then. With that, I invite Kent Loken to come on forward.
It's complicated. That was one of the first things we heard from Reverend Dr. Munib Yunan, Bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land, when we met at the Lutheran Church of the Redeemer in the Old City of Jerusalem in May of 2013. Four of us, Dr. Per Anderson, Conductor Foster Beyers, Pastor Ellie McCann, and I, made the trip to explore the possibility of the Concordia Orchestra touring in Israel and Palestine in May of 2014. It's complicated. We heard again when we met with Dr. Charlie Haddad, superintendent of the ELC JHL schools. We were gathered in his office to discuss the possibility of having the Concordia Orchestra perform at one or more of the elementary or high schools. It's complicated. We heard yet again from Dr. Mark Brown, regional representative for the Lutheran World Federation. We met with him in his beautiful brick house, which sits atop the Mount of Olives, next to the Augusta Victoria Hospital, to get his insight into having the Concordia Orchestra tour and perform in both Israel and Palestine. It's complicated became our inspiration when the decision was made by the President's cabinet to allow this tour to happen. It's complicated has become part of our answer to any questions that have been asked, either by the orchestra members in one of the cultural sessions prior to departure, or by anyone wanting to know more about our experience upon returning. 42 orchestra members and 10 staff departed on Tuesday, May 6, 2014 for an historic tour, the first time that an American orchestra toured both Israel and Palestine. Returning on Tuesday, May 19th, I can truly say that our lives were changed in many ways. This morning, you'll get a glimpse of how this life-changing tour impacted the student performers. 4 of those who went will share one of many moments they experienced that made a lasting impression on their lives.
They herded us like cattle, I remember, as we walked through the winding metal fences, as we approached the security guards who would decide whether or not we made it through the Calandia checkpoint. I remember my heart racing. I was scared inside, but I thought to myself that this was an extreme adventure. And then I had to remind myself that this is the reality that so many Palestinians face every morning as they wish to go to and return from work, if they are lucky enough to have a passport into Israel. One morning we woke up very early, a group of 19 students, I remember, because the bus fit 21. And Ellie, of course, and the bus driver had to attend, so there was 19 students. We were driving from Beit Jala to Ramallah through the Container Road, which is the road that Palestinians have to take if they do not have access through Jerusalem. This 5-mile trek became an hour-and-a-half excursion of winding roads for us. And it's just another reality that the Palestinians have to face if they don't have access through Israel. When we got to Ramallah, we attended a beautiful church service with one of Ellie's friends as a pastor, and on the way home, we got the unique experience to go through the Calandia checkpoint from Ramallah into Jerusalem. As we approached it, we waited for Solveig as she was lagging behind a little bit, and we entered not knowing what to expect. And immediately we were astounded how so many people could be forced through these small boundaries where fences were on either side. At any point they could lock you in, which did happen. Immediately as I walked through one of the rolling counters, it stopped and the person behind me could not get through. I tried to help him turn the door, but we realized that they had locked it either because I looked suspicious or there was too many people inside. And as we continued towards the actual security point, I became more and more nervous as we would go through metal detector and airport-like security. First, I took off my jacket and I walked through the metal security detector, and it beeped. I was the first one it beeped for, and I was terrified. Immediately, the security guards started yelling at me in Hebrew, but I didn't understand what they were saying. I went back, and I took off my belt, and I walked through again, and it beeped again. This time, they yelled at me in Arabic. I still couldn't understand what they were saying, and I was terrified. At this point, Ellie jumped in, and Pastor Ellie helped me to figure out what was the problem, my cell phone. But for those moments, I was absolutely terrified that I would not make it through, and I had to think to myself that what would happen if this was a Palestinian who had forgotten to take out his phone? How would they have treated him instead of me? Because at the end of the day, I hold a blue passport. Thank you.
As I was preparing to go to the Holy Land, I talked with a lot of friends and family, and they told me that as a Christian and as one who believes in Jesus Christ, that I would be so moved by all of the holy sites we would visit where Jesus actually walked. And so when we got there, we started going to these holy sites, and one of them was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, this site where Jesus was crucified. And this church, it was kind of crowded, and it was a little chaotic of an experience, and I really wasn't as moved as I expected to be, and I was kind of confused. I was kind of confused by that, why I wasn't really impacted as much as I wanted to be. But we were on the bus one day, and our tour guide, Nodder, he said it so well, and it's stuck with me. He said, folks, Jesus Christ, he doesn't live in these stones. And I realized that if I was expecting to see Jesus in these old stones, I wasn't going to find it, because I saw Jesus in the people that love him and the people that follow him. And that has continued to stick with me. And I further realized that Jesus isn't confined to just the Holy Land where he walked 2,000 years ago, but he continues to transform the lives of people who trust in him. And that happens in the Holy Land, but it also happens in all parts of the world, to people everywhere, and even here at Concordia. So yeah, that's something that stuck with me.
So as mentioned, what a complicated part of the world, and logistically and historically and religiously we had the opportunity to engage in. But through it all, I was left with the realization that in that case, there's an awful lot of simple things that happen. So in a complicated part of the world, there's also beautiful moments of simplicity that remind us that if we can see through all the complicated things that surround us, we see the humanity in each of us. And there are three little moments that really struck me. The first was we played chamber music at Augusta Victoria Hospital, and it's a Gothic institution, huge ceilings, and there were chamber groups throughout the whole building, and you'd walk through and hear music happening from different areas. And two of my clarinetists were playing duets up in the cancer ward, so I snuck up in there, and, well, it gets a bit emotional. But people in wheelchairs and hooked up to IV, listening to clarinet music and just immersed in our students just for that pure moment of simplicity of sharing through sound and community, what a gift that was. Then another time we were having a dinner at a church, and it was one of the pictures we saw here was great barbecues and foods. And one of my favorite things in life to do is to speak Donald Duck. So I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And before I knew it, a little boy, 5 years old, right? So give me 5, right? So in that moment, all the layers, all the confusion, all the things we worry about disappear in a slap of the hand and saying, give me 5. And perhaps even the most powerful was our concert in Ramallah. We were delayed. We didn't understand why it took a little bit longer to get there. We found out later there had been killing at one of the checkpoints. There was stone throwing and protests going on from some of the Palestinians, and tragically there was killing. Rubber bullets weren't used, and 2 souls were lost, and they happened to be friends of orchestra members that were playing with us that night. So you can imagine the power of that moment, and conversation was, do we play the concert that night, or should we just, out of respect for what happened that day, not play? And all the musicians for the Palestinian Youth Symphony just said, we need to play. And then they dedicated the performance for the concert that night in the memory of these students and friends that had passed away. So in a moment of beautiful silence and camaraderie and coming together to remembering lives and richness, through a moment of Donald Duck, through a moment of healing in a hospital, suddenly those layers of complexity disappear, as the humanity has a chance to really ring true. So the trip was just rich in so many different ways, but those are the lingering ones to me. Is yes, it's complicated, but when you get to the core of something, man, are we lucky to find that truth.
It was a privilege to be able to go to Israel and Palestine, a privilege to eat an abundance of falafel and hummus, to meet energetic students from the Edward Said Music Conservatory, see the beauty of the Holy Land, and to share our music with so many people. It's a chance not many people get or even seek out, but one I think everyone should experience. Then, and even now, though, it's hard to grasp all of the complexities and challenges we did experience in Israel. To give you an example, I want you to picture this. Picture 45 to 50 orchestra members rolling timpanis, basses, cellos, violas, violins, and stand cases through the about 10-foot wide cobblestone streets of the Old City in Jerusalem, while wearing concert black. This is about like 25% of our tour. How did we do it? It's complicated to explain. Now picture this. Picture a place where some people have to wait hours at a dark, dreary checkpoint just to get home. A place where a giant gray wall was put in place that now separates families, friends, the political atmosphere, and the wealth of the population. Imagine meeting people and playing music with those who have seen violence regularly, or have been or taken from their homes, or had a loved one killed in political conflict. Imagine a place where millions of tourists visit every year to the holy sites and never hear a word of these stories or meet these amazing people. How does this happen in the world? Why does it happen? That's also complicated. Today, as Israel and Palestine are consistently in the news, it's difficult to understand all of the complexities within this big picture that we only saw snapshots of on our tour. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't or can't do anything. Just means it's complicated. The good news is music is also complicated and simple. On our tour, we somehow managed to hit some drums, play some wooden boxes and brass concoctions to make some noises at the same time. Our sounds made people in all parts of Israel and Palestine, from many different political, economic, and social backgrounds, come together and connect to one thing. That's complicated.
I just want to say how proud I am to be a part of something like this, how proud I am of an institution that would support this, and there's so many people that are involved in that and made that happen. But I really want to thank the students who were amazing, remarkable from the moment we reached that country and all of that unfamiliarity. They just treated everything completely openly. There's something very special about playing music with people of different backgrounds and experiences, and that is that in that moment that we play music, when we sit down and you and your stand partner are looking at the same piece of music and the same notes, In that moment, you immediately become equal. You have the same goal, to make a beautiful sound, to play with good intonation, to make a phrase. And I don't think that there's anything else that could have created that kind of equality so quickly. And that's why, among many other things, this trip was very special. I wanted to leave you with a poem from a book that I found in the bookstore of the sort of legendary American Colony Hotel in Jerusalem. I was kind of browsing through and I saw this book. It's a book of poems by Hafiz, who's a Persian poet. And these are English translations, so they're a little bit updated. But as I was paging through this book, I read one of the poems and just immediately burst into tears. I just thought it was so beautiful. And so I thought this particular poem was appropriate to the subject today. If God invited you to a party, and said, "Everyone in the ballroom tonight will be my special guest," how would you then treat them when you arrived? Indeed, and Hafiz knows there is no one in this world who is not upon his jeweled dance floor. Thank you for being here today.
Pray for peace. Go in peace. And be God's peace. Amen.